Okay, I am going to do a tutorial on how I use my sketchbook as a centering tool. So first I'm going to show you a couple things. This is my stack of old magazines. There's a lot of National Geographics and old catalogs. I get them from the library and yard sales. And then this is a big old basket, and I rip up pieces of my magazines, like whatever. If I like it, I don't think twice. I turn off the inner critic and I just rip it, and then I throw it in here. And this has, like, that's an old calendar. This has really changed how I use my sketchbook because I tend to be very analytical. I tend to be in my head a lot. And with that, that means that, like, I would spend a lot of time with my sketchbooks flipping through a magazine with a question in mind, thinking, do I like this? Should I cut this out? I don't know. And that was taking the joy out of my sketchbook. So what I do now is I start with the magazines, rip them up, throw them in the big basket, and then you're gonna see how this works. So sketchbook as a centering tool is a little bit different. So here's my sketchbook, the 9x12s I talked about. Here's another one. And I like the 90-pound paper because I like to write usually with Sharpies and it doesn't bleed through. And then I'm gonna go ahead and show you, like, kind of, I also like them when they're really big like this because I can, I don't know, be more free on the page. So I'm gonna show you a finished product and then I'm gonna work backwards. So the thing I usually do with the centering tool is I ask my body a question, and we're gonna do a lot of writing from the body because there's a lot of research that shows that the body holds everything. All the wisdom that we need is inside here, even more than here, but it's difficult to access because for whatever reasons, there's cultural reasons, there's kind of nature, nurture reasons why we have forgotten how to speak the language of our body. So I would start this practice by doing a scan, a body scan. And when you do a body scan, you kind of plant your feet. You notice if you're slumped, you get your posture up. Feel your spine, you feel your butt in the seat, you feel your hips in the seat, and then you ask, what part of my body is trying to talk to me right now? And usually for me that means something that hurts, like what part of my body is hurting? And then when I ask that question, I just sort of go top down and I just kind of scan all the way down. And I can feel that there's this pain that I want to ask about. So I ask that question, and then I use cards. Now, this would be only if this is something you want to invest in. They're called archetype cards. And archetypes, you probably know, are symbols that show up across time, across culture, across ethnicity and race and gender and sexuality. They are like bridges for the common human experience. And these are my favorite ones. This artist is really fascinating, Kim Krantz. So she has a deck of cards called archetype cards. So when I find my question, which was, what is the pain in my hips? I pull out a card. Now, if you don't have a deck of cards, you don't have to do this part. You could go straight to your basket of images, right? And so you have this basket, and you just like, okay, what's the pain in my hips? And I'm gonna choose 3. There's my first one. There's my second. And I should say, I'll do a lot of tutorials on this because we're gonna use this tool a lot, and I wanna offer it to you because I literally started doing these when I was 19 and I haven't stopped, and I'm 40. So this tool has served me in my life more than almost anything else, and that's why I wanna offer it to you. Okay, here's the third one. I don't really particularly like the images, what do the words say? An ode to the artisan's hands. Huh, okay. I don't know. I don't know what it means. So then I would start to rip and cut, and I would, it doesn't have to be precious in any way. Rip. I don't know what it means yet, but I'm gonna combine it with these icebergs, and then I'm gonna combine it with this like young girl who's digging for something. And you know, the way my mind works, even without gluing these down, I already have some thoughts, right? There's something about the pain in my hips, to me, that has to do with freeze, things that are frozen, that I'm trying to dig out of the ground, that has to do with me as an artist. And they're lodged, and I don't know how to get them out. And so that would be my journal for the day. Does that make sense? It's mine, right? I get to make the meaning. No one can tell me, like, that's not what that means. That's not what these are saying. Who knows? That's what I pulled, and that's what I'm gonna do for my journal. So I'll show you, this is a finished one. And in this one, I asked the same thing, what is the pain in my hips? And then I drew kind of a card from this deck, and I drew a card called Kairos. So the card for Kairos has to do with time. That's what the card looked like. And these are what the words were. And this is why I like the cards, is because when I add someone else's words to the images that I draw, I get even more meaning out of it. So I drew the card, I drew my 3 images, and then I glued them down, and I wrote some words that came from Kim Krantz's booklet. I wrote, everything has a time of ripeness. I wrote patience and precision. I wrote, it's when I fight against time. But no clock can guide you. Wait for the rush of inner knowing and not a moment longer. And there had something to do here. After I put the images down, I was like, okay, well, this looks sort of like fruit falling from a tree. And this is brain imagery. And then there's all these like patterns happening, and then an elephant. And I mean, I could ask each of you, like, okay, go, like just start riffing off it, like write down, and well, I think it means this, Trinity, or I think it means this. And there wouldn't be a wrong answer, because it would be your interpretation of what these mean to you, right? But it gave me something to think about. It centered me. I went, oh, okay, first I know there's pain in my hips. Second, it has something to do with time and trust and the fact that I'm fighting to create something before. And that's sort of what the elephant meant to me, is I think of elephants as these like incredibly wise, old soul creatures who just like, it's like there's no misstep, right? Like if they plant their foot, they know where they're going. And I was thinking about that, like I keep trying to rush ahead and it's hurting me, and I want to slow down, and I want to trust that everything has a time of ripeness. And that was my centering tool for the day. I'll show you again. That's what it looked like. And just so you know, I am not a visual artist. Like, I can't draw to save my life. But this I can do. I can rip things up, and I can cut them out, and I can glue them down, and I can write down somebody else's words, whatever stood out that helped me make meaning. So I'll see if I can get like a finish. I'm gonna go ahead and draw a card and finish this one, and then I'll share it with you too, so you can see like this second kind of copy, the one that you were here for the process of, and see what it says that my hips said. And that's it. And I don't know if this feels intimidating. You have to let me know, like, this. And you know what I would say is, try it anyway. I have students that still do this, similar to me. I taught them, God, 15 years ago, and they still use this tool. And it's become like one of their most sacred companions. And I'll take a picture too. I'll show you like how many of these journals I have. That's a pretty great story. Has to do with my house burning down and how I didn't lose all the journals, but it was like the number one thing that I asked the firemen, other than my dog, who did die in the fire. The number one thing I asked was like, did my journals burn? And they didn't. So I have this like amazing kind of record of my life and of my own like interior human process.